Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rio. I am an actor and general maker, consumer of things, and I brought you here today because I want to talk about all the books that I've read in 2024. It's that time of year. I have not read as much as I read much more this year than I did last year. Last year I read like 10 books, but in the years previously, I have been an average 100 book a year reader. So I'm kind of finding back to a place where I am regularly consuming like literary things and books and short stories and essays and that kind of stuff. I have a ranking system, okay? This is a ranking because there are certain books that I do like more than others. So let's just go through the ranks very quickly before we get started. Bottom tier is The Shoe Throw. And if you don't know this reference, it is quite iconic. It comes out of the 2008, what I'm assuming to be the recession, where during a press interview, an Iraqi journalist got up and threw a shoe, presumably his own shoe, at President George W. Bush. If there are any books that end up in this category, there are books that end up in this category. Just know that I'm the journalist and I'm throwing my shoe at you. The second tier, up from The Shoe Throw, is I'm Finding It, which is a reference to the famous TikTok sound.
Be nice.
I'm finding it.
It take you that long to find it?
It does.
If any books end up in this category, they are books that I'm trying really, really hard to say good things about. Maybe because they didn't make much of an impression on me, or maybe because they were quite boring, or maybe they just didn't hit for me, or maybe they had good things, enough good things that I'm not wanting to throw a shoe at them, but perhaps just not good enough to end anywhere else, you know? The third one is I'm a Star, which also refers to the famous TikTok sound. Please, I'm a star!
I'm sorry, it's too much.
From Pearl, it's Mia Goth, the actor, doing the I'm a star, please, I'm a star. These are books that really tried so hard to do it for me and then just really couldn't do it. I expected so much more of them. I really wanted them to succeed, to become my new favorites, to make an impression on me, and they just didn't. And it's heartbreaking, and it's sad, and it's, the books standing on a stage screaming, I'm a star, to me in the audience going, ooh, okay. Also, I'm wearing Twilight earrings, the book, and I thought that was very fitting for, this video. The second highest tier is yippee, yippee, yippee. These are books that just filled me with such joy. I had such a good time reading them. I definitely recommend them to other people. They have a special place in my heart. But they're not necessarily my favorites, holy grail from this year. Books that will forever stay on my bookshelf, you know what I mean? These are books that are still... okay, before I move on to this next sentence, you need to know I am very much for donating books. If you've read a book and you don't really like it, you don't see yourself rereading it, you don't see it adding any kind of value to your life further, I'm very for donating that book or giving it away. I want to have a curated set of bookshelves rather than just as much as possible. And so I buy most of my books used and also donate a lot of my books. They go out and, hello, the washing machine is on and it is annoying me deeply. And physical media takes up a lot of space, yes, but also if I don't like a book, I know there are people out there who would love that book. And so why not donate it and let it go back into the circulation so that the people who will really appreciate it can actually get it. The books in this category, the yippee category, they're still in danger of being redonated into the circulation. maybe in a couple of years, maybe when I go, actually, I don't think I'm going to reread this anytime soon. And the next category is televangelism, after the Ethel Cain song. Ethel Cain was on my top 5 artists. Thank you so much. I know I am better than everyone. Thank you, thank you. It's this like beautiful instrumental that makes you feel so at ease and at peace within yourself and within your environment. And every time I listen to that song, I cry, meaning that this had to be the title of just the top tier, God tier, okay? If a book lands in this category, it means that it will forever have a home with me, and it made such an impression on me, and I cannot stop talking about it and stop thinking about it, even if it's been months since I read it, okay? These are the categories. We're gonna go through book by book, and then I'll announce where they fit into the categories, instead of doing like category by category, if you know what I mean. It's more exciting that way. So I think actually we should just get into it. Also, have I said that it's Christmas, which is why I'm sitting in front of my Christmas tree, which I have decorated. Thank you. And it does have Norwegian flags on, because that's traditional in my culture. Not just any, I'm Norwegian, that's why. Okay, we're not, I haven't just like found a random country flag and put it on my tree. We also have some ribbons hanging down, beautiful little baubles. Most of these things are handmade, except for like the little crystal balls, which are beautiful and my cat loves. Let's start with Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, okay? This is I would say non-fiction, kind of memoir, kind of self-help, and it's amazing. I really love Elizabeth Gilbert. I really love her writing. I really love what she has to say about like creativity and the act of being creative and the act of making something. Obviously, she's a writer, and I'm, dabbling in that. And I think anyone who kind of sees themselves or want to do something creative, I guess, should read this book, or at least skip through it a little bit. Throughout this, she writes about her journey to becoming a writer, also her journey with like what it means for her to write and what creativity means to her. And she calls it magic, which is why the book is also called Big Magic. She speaks about creativity existing as like an independent energy and an independent force, something that is magical to us as human beings, and it kind of floats around in this state that is like the fourth dimension, like something that we cannot grasp before it kind of decides to drop into each individual person's head. Elizabeth Gilbert is, onto something, which is why I'm placing this book in televangelism. And it's because I'm not ever getting rid of it. Next book, Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. This is the only Rainbow Rowell book that I've ever read, and this used to be my absolute favorite book when I was like 14, 15. I'm placing Eleanor and Park in yippee category because it's just so wow. It's set in the 80s, if I'm not completely wrong. And you have two main characters. You have Eleanor and you have Park. And these two characters are quite very different. They're from different socio-economic places in society. They're also different races. And during, obviously, the 80s, 40 years ago, Eleanor is kind of white trash vibes. Her stepfather is abusive and alcoholic, and she's having a really rough time. They are struggling with money. She has lots of little siblings. She's been kind of in and out of, not homes, but she's been sent away to live with several relatives because her stepfather hates her. And then Park is Korean, and his family is quite wealthy. He has a younger brother, and he is not popular, but he's also not unpopular. Like the popular kids leave him alone, even though, Eleanor is incredibly bullied. And they fall in love. And it's about the dynamics of these two people kind of coming together. It's about like young love, first love, like what does it feel like to get those kinds of feelings of people for the first time? Like what does it feel to like be truly known by another person? And then at the same time, it's also a lot about shame. It's a book that talks a lot about the embarrassment of bearing your soul to someone in a way. Like, there are so many points during this book where Park is so deeply ashamed about the fact that he likes Eleanor. It's such like harsh and horrible and dark feelings to be feeling about someone that you love, while still being really tender in a way. I love this book. I think reading it as a 25-year-old, obviously I'm going to have a different perspective, but I read it really quickly this time around. It was like a summer read for me, like literally within a day and a half. And it's actually quite really important to me. It's also a lot about like abuse, and it's about sexual abuse as well, and about kind of being young and having to deal with the trauma that happens to you. Next one is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I'm going to say something so controversial right now. This is an I'm finding it book for me. It's incredibly beautiful. Okay, calm down. Okay, calm down. Put down the pitchforks, please. I'm begging. Okay, let me just explain myself. It is an incredibly beautiful book. Okay, it talks about intergenerational trauma. It talks about abuse from a parental figure. It talks about drug abuse and addiction. It talks about being gay in the 80s and 90s, right? It talks about trying to find your footing as a young person again. And the language is so beautiful, kind of dreamlike, kind of like very poetic. And it's also for that exact reason that I'm going to say it did not really hit for me, because there were too many points where I had to kind of put the book down and be like, what are we saying? Like, I feel like I've read this in a Tumblr post in 2013. This is simply my opinion, okay? Don't shoot me, please. There were times where we're just like, there surely is a way to tell this story that isn't so flowery to the point where you've kind of lost me now. You've snaked your way so far, like, around the point of like the core of like what is happening and how you're feeling, that I'm kind of just like, yeah. And we're also jumping like around in time a lot, so it was a bit confusing. And like, English is my second language, so please. What I did like really, really love though is like the premise of the book being written for a person who will never read it, because of the language barrier and the fact that language and the way that we use language has such a strong, like, it determines essentially how we experience something. Ocean is writing from the point of view of like having a mother specifically who does not speak any English, and he's dedicating the entire book to her. Like, writing, this is my story, this is what I've experienced, this is like a love letter and also kind of a hate letter to his abusive mother. And I found that to be both like really beautiful and really heartbreaking. So it's like, does it belong in the I'm finding it tier? Maybe, maybe not. Am I gonna keep this book? Absolutely. And I do think it is worth a read. It's just sometimes I went, what is going on even? Okay, next, Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I love this book. Well, I loved it in a way of like, this is really fluffy, really easy. It was a spin on romance that I really, really enjoyed. So Chloe Brown is disabled and autistic, I believe. And her disability is also like an essential part of her as a person, and it was written with such care and such truthfulness. Also, the people felt really realistic, really three-dimensional. They felt it felt like the decisions that they were making were definitely very informed by their situation and their emotions and their experiences, and the romance felt quite, contained and realistic in a way. And it wasn't like anything outrageous, which is, I mean, sometimes I want really outrageous things. I do think I'm putting this in I'm a star, because it's begging me to love it, and yet I do not. And I think that is simply because it is perhaps like the tingiest bit too straight for me. It's like there are many romances where I go, I actually don't give a shit about this couple being straight. Like, their romance is, like, much more important to me than, like, what identities they have, whatever. But this book felt, at times, like, just a bit too straight, where I'm going, this is very much like a man-woman dynamic. And it's a straight romance. Like, what the fuck am I even saying? Like, it's, like, I knew that going into the book. It's a straight romance. It's between a man and a woman, and there's this. Like, I really did like the people. I liked the pacing of the story. I liked the fact that they talked about class, but not in like an overt kind of feeding it down my throat kind of way, but where class was definitely very taken into account in these people's dynamics, of Chloe being from quite a well-off kind of put-together family, and Red being kind of like a working class man. They have a really lovely romance. It takes time. It has some longing in here, thank God. I actually cannot stand romances that, like, happen within the first 200 pages. Like, I'm like, it was good, okay? It was good. Next book is Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Sally Rooney. I am putting this book in yippee, okay? It is not as good as Normal People, in my opinion. Probably the same level as Conversations with Friends for me. I really liked it, though. I thought it was really good. I am super interested in the way Sally Rooney writes characters, the way that she writes people, and the way that she writes really politically, like with people having their political stances kind of inherent to their identities, because that's how I'm living my life, and how a lot of young people around me, and just in culture, I think, we are living with, like, our political identities kind of just as a part of our concepts of ourselves, rather than just like something that we vote for a couple of times. I'm very interested in the dynamics of a relationship. And this is, I think, the differences between Chloe Brown, for example, and Beautiful World, Where Are You? Because this is also like a straight romance, technically. I mean, it's two people getting into a relationship, and they happen to be cis and a man and a woman, right? But this book does not feel straight. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like man, woman. It's much more complicated than that. And it also talks a lot about shame, actually, about like having done bad things, and then like what can be forgiven in that, and like how much shame can we live with as people, and like what warrants shame. The reason why this is not in televangelism is because of the form that the book takes. So it's half of the book, every other chapter is like an email format or a letter format, and they speak so much about like current culture, philosophy, politics, and it's very like essay. And then the other half, so every other chapter from that is like something that is happening, so like actions, people interacting with each other, people having conversations, dialogue, like that kind of stuff. That was my favorite part. The email corresponding, the letter corresponding was not that much of interest to me. I definitely felt like I was learning a lot, but I found myself always halfway through those chapters to like hurry to get to the chapters that I really liked. I love Sally Rooney so much. I think she's honestly like a big reason for my style of like acting and what I'm interested in, the kind of shows that I watch, the kind of acting that I do. And I will read anything that she ever puts out, which is why Intermezzo is on the top of my wish list for Christmas. Next book is Page Boy by Elliot Page. This is a memoir. He talks about his career, his life, what it was like to kind of grow into like a film star, essentially. What it was to come out as gay in a culture in Hollywood that absolutely did not accept that, especially not for lesbians. And then it talks about his transition, and it was just it was amazing. This is truly, like, this was so good. It was really good. And I'm obviously speaking from a very biased perspective because I love people talking about acting and people talking about film, okay? Anyone talks about like the film industry, I love like insider information about what it was like to be on certain sets, or what it was like to be in a specific moment in time during like the height of Hollywood, or, you know, whatever. And obviously Elliot Page is Canadian. He did not grow up like in Los Angeles or whatever, but he did move to Los Angeles at quite a young age in order to pursue film, even though he fell into film and acting kind of by chance. But what this book actually was also really filled with is like a tender recounting of a young person's life in a broken family. It talks a lot about his relationship to his stepmother and how she was not very nice. She was not a very nice person, and their relationship was quite difficult and hard. And some of the most heartbreaking moments in this book was, yes, of course, when he's like being outed to the press and his relationships are breaking apart and he feels like he has to stay closeted, but also the moments where his dad chooses his stepmother and the relationship that he has to her rather than the well-being of Elliot, and how Elliot like had to come to like the realization and come to terms with the fact that his father was maybe perhaps not a person that could have access to his life. And it was overall like, it was so good, and I recommend it to absolutely anyone and everyone. And I'll probably reread this, to be honest. Are we still on that spin cycle? Hello, it's Editing Rio from the future. I have just realized that I didn't actually put Page Boy into any category. So I am going to officially put Page Boy in the yippee category. Okay, let's move on. Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. This is a short story collection. It is from the same author that also wrote Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings. I've technically read both. I read Convenience Store Woman like a couple of years ago, and then I tried to read Earthlings, but Earthlings, trigger warning, Earthlings has a very graphic child's essay scene in it, in like the middle, and I was reading that on the tube going somewhere, and it made me so nauseous, like actually like made me nauseous, and so I put it down and never finished it, because I was like, it's a wonderful book and it's really well written and I love it, but I cannot get through the scene for my own well-being. Sayaka Murata talks a lot, very often actually, about like the disenfranchising of a person, of how sometimes as a person you can feel so alienated from the other people around you. I know nothing about this author, right? Like I don't know about her, like I don't know about her identities, like I don't know if she is, or, you know, but it really reads as the autistic experience to me. Life Ceremony is also very similar to that. However, Life Ceremony does other things than Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings. This short story collection has lots of different kind of otherworldly, kind of magical realism moments in them. Like there is a short story about two girls keeping a man who is also kind of half animal in a cage, or like keeping him as a pet. There are other short stories. Actually, the one that I liked the most was called Life Ceremony. It's basically in this alternative world where after someone dies, it's customary for you to eat that person, but it's like in a very ceremonious way. There are ways to prepare the body and to prepare like the meals being eaten by this, you know, in that way. Ways to, you know, preserve the hair and everything. And it's just this huge life ceremony in celebration of that person who just passed. And it's also a way for all of the mourners to take a piece of that person with them further into their life, to have their life sustaining our life. Like, you've given me energy and sustenance so that I can continue living. It was a lot of like food recipes and stuff that, like, I guess normal people would be like, oh, why are we talking about like preparing people's eyeballs and shit for consumption? But I found it actually so beautiful. I'm into weird shit though. I'm not a super big fan of short story collections in general, just because I find them a bit hard to read. Like, I have ADHD, and if I have to like stop and start something constantly, I feel interrupted in the act of reading. Like if I finish a short story and I'm still on the tube, I don't feel like I can start a new short story when it's 5 minutes until my stop. It takes a lot of energy for me to like stop and start the act of like engaging in content, you know what I mean? I love short stories, but it has to be in a way that I find quite easy to consume, and I didn't find this very easy to consume, especially also because it has like lots of magical realism, lots of like weird shit in it. But because I did love this story so much, I've bumped it to I'm a star, of like it's begging me to be higher up on the list, and it's not. But it's not like, it's not bad at all. It's really good, actually. And I loved the life ceremony story. If you're into a bit weird shit, you should read Sayaka Murata for sure. I think she has some really good, interesting points. Next, Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. This is a book about two people who are getting bullied. And the main character, so we see everything from the perspective of the boy. The main character gets like violently beaten up. There's a point, that was a scene where I had to like put this book down because it was really graphic. There is a point where people are treating his head as a football, and it was just like horrific to read. And then he meets Kojima, who's a girl at his school, his classmate, who's also being like really bullied, but in a different way. She's being bullied by the girls, not in such a physical manner, more psychological and sinister in a way, like in a way that isn't so obvious. And they start a friendship. It was really good. I deeply recommend it. I'm giving it I'm a star because I feel like it was trying to achieve something with me that it just didn't. I haven't fully thought about this book after finishing it. And even though I'm very intrigued by the other books that Kawakami has written, I am now not entirely sure if I'm going to keep this. Do you know what I mean? Next book, Transitions. This is a collection of essays, and it's by, okay, let's read this list of authors, okay? Winners of the inaugural JKP Writing Prize. So the authors are Den Casey, Cole Fulmine, Danielle Hopkins, Kieran Metcalf, Harry Mitsumoto, Tash Oaks Munger, Edward Whelan, and Ezra Woodger. And this is a whole bunch of essays about being trans. They were really good. I found myself a lot in these essays. I really related to a whole bunch of them. I have made notes in the essays. There's a quote here. I have taken a part of that childhood laughter, freedom, and adventure found in those woods and potted it within my name to be carried around in my everyday life. Come on. For freedom, you sacrifice safety, a truth all trans people know. Like, it was really good. Now my body is genderless because it's mine and I said so. I've given this I'm a star because even though I can read these quotes, I don't actually much remember what the essays were about. I remember sitting on the tube and reading them and really feeling what was happening and really like relating to a lot of like the author's perspectives. I can't tell you what the essays were about, like actually about, which is why it's an I'm a star. Next, My Annihilation by Fuminori Nakamura. What is this about? This is like, it's written from the perspective of a serial killer or like a psychopath or like an aspiring person who hurts people, maybe, perhaps. And it's like kind of weirdly put together. It's kind of sold to me as like a multimedia like narrative. I'm going to have to give this to shoot through, not because it was outrageously bad or anything. It's just like it made zero impression on me, and I actually had to like force myself to finish the final 100 pages. I had such high hopes. I love like a multimedia kind of figuring out like the narrative, unreliable narrator. Like I love that shit. Like I'm so interested in that shit, and it just wasn't that at all. Maybe that was the marketing that was done wrong. Maybe I misunderstood something. I don't know. It was just like really jumbled, sometimes not really super interesting. And I'm sorry, you're gonna get a shoe thrown. The next one is True Story by Kate Reed Petty. Oh my god. Oh my god. I love this book so much. I love this book so much, okay? This book is essentially about what happens after someone accuses someone of assault. And it takes place through like entire lives. And this is a format that is really interesting, okay? Some of it is written in diary, some of it is written in literal, like, movie script. Slay. Some of it is written in, like, college essays, and it's, like, scribbles in the margins. It was, oh my god, it's so good. And also, oh my goodness, it talks about truth. Like, what is truth? Who do you believe? And who gets to decide who we believe in any kind of situation? Like, who's the main narrative? And there is specifically a short story in here, or like a part of the story in here, that made me go, I'm making this into a film. I have to make this into a film. I have to get in front of my laptop and write the script right now. And books that do that to me, I love you. This is obviously televangelism. This is obviously peace on earth. You've done it. Go and read this book immediately. It's so good. Next one is New Animal by Ella Baxter. It's a debut novel, I believe. Amelia's mother, well, Amelia works in like a funeral parlor. Her family runs a funeral parlor. So they're very like into death. Well, not into death, but they take care of dead bodies. Like Amelia is like a makeup artist, so she'll like treat the body before funeral, like before the family get to see the body. And they also arrange the funerals and all of that. And then her mum dies unexpectedly. That's not a spoiler, that happens within the first 20 pages, okay? Her mum dies, and so Amelia has to fly back to her father's, or she escapes back to her father's house because she refuses to go to her mother's funeral. How do you deal with the passing of your parent when it was a very unexpected death? What's your relationship to death if you've literally grown up around death because your family runs a funeral parlor? And then Ella Baxter threw in something very fascinating into the whole mix of this, which was essentially Amelia starts getting obsessed with BDSM. She starts to engage with the local BDSM community. And it's like life and death and sex and like intimacy and vulnerability and grief. It was really good. I felt Amelia's vulnerability. I felt her, how she's feeling so lost in the world. I felt her grief. Like, it was overall. I am giving this book yippee status, okay? Yippee, yippee, yippee. Next one, Heartstopper. I reread all of Heartstopper because of the new and final installment of the comic books are being currently released by Alice Oseman. I love Heartstopper. It made a real impact on me when I read the comics when I was much younger, and then also when I read or watched the series on Netflix. I think it's an incredibly important story. I think the narrative is really important. I think it's really fluffy and like really like teenager, which is exactly what is needed. It has perspectives that we've not actually really seen on such a mainstream scale before. Like, I love Isaac's storyline of being asexual. I love like Elle's storyline of being trans. Like, it's very near and dear to my heart. So I just reread all of the comic books. I'm giving Heartstopper yippee status. I think it's great. I think if you need something really fluffy, cozy, but also kind of talks about like really real life issues like self-harm and eating disorder, depression, and sometimes like difficult family life, it's something to pick up for sure. And also you can find Heartstopper for free online, so you don't have to buy like any editions or anything, which is also really good. Like, I love it when artists kind of publish things for the masses for the purpose of, you know, publishing this. And I'm so happy that Alice Oseman has the means to create and still kind of offer it up for free for people. Like, that's not something that everyone is privileged enough to do. So I'm very grateful for that. The next book is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. This is kind of a slice of life. It's about a person who she quits her like high paying kind of corporate job because she feels really disenfranchised from her life and the people around her and kind of her purpose. And she moves back to, I believe, her uncle's place, like above a bookshop. And he runs this like used bookshop. And it's literally just about her finding back to what it is to be a human being. and like finding back to what is her life, living really slowly and intentionally, and also kind of dealing with just being depressed and like, what is it to be depressed? And we always, like, we talk about like, oh, I'm so depressed, oh, depression, but like, it's a really serious condition actually, and like kills a whole bunch of people. I thought it was really, really good and cozy. It hasn't made that much of an impression on me, to be honest. Because of that, I'm a star status. I don't think I'll reread it, but I did really appreciate it for what it was, you know? Next one, History of Bees. Sorry, I had to translate it in my head. History of Bees by Maja Lunde. She's a Norwegian author. She writes in Norwegian, and then it has been translated to English and actually many other languages as well. Maja Lunde is, is she an activist? She writes with like the climate crisis in focus. She has a trilogy, maybe it's a quartet? Yeah, I think it's a quartet. I think it has 4 books. And I've read the one that's about the water, fresh water. And this History of Bees is about bees and the disappearing of bees and the discovery of bees. And it's written in 3 different timelines. So in the past, present, and the future. So the past is about the scientist kind of finding back into his element and into his interest as a scientist and as a discoverer by taking care of bees, studying bees, seeing how they work and how they relate to like human life. And then the present is about this bee farm in the States. It's about the bees slowly disappearing, like how hard it is to be a beekeeper, essentially, when like the climate is not sustaining the life of bees. And then the future is set like 100 years into the future for us. And it's in a situation where all bees have disappeared. Okay, there are no more bees, and this has had catastrophic effects on ecology, on the food distribution and system, and just growing in general, as we are so dependent on bees for pollination and for a lot of things that has to do with like crops and fruit and berries, lots of things that grow. And if bees disappear, that will disrupt the entire ecosystem. And bees are disappearing. Like, that is the reality that we are living in right now. And that is a terrifying thought to me. And I think Maja Lunde is so good at relating these like really like big, what feels really cerebral, meaning heady theoretical worries, questions, the themes into something that feels really personal, relating them to like actual people, and making you care about the characters and then also care about the situation. And it was really good. I really like Maja Lunde. I think she's an amazing author, and I'm really proud of the fact that she's Norwegian. And I am going to read Przewalski's Horse. I think more people should write about the climate crisis in like such a real way, because it is imminent and it is upon us, okay? It is actively happening right now. I'm giving History of Bees, I am a star. And I really, really, really wanted it to be like a yippie, maybe even a televangelism, because I loved the first book I read from her. Like, I wanted to like it so much. Makes it an Please I'm a Star rather than anything else. It was slightly too slow and it was a bit too repetitive at times. And I'm still going to read all of the other books that she's, continuing to publish, because I do think she's a fantastic writer, but it is I'm a star category for now. Next one is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. This is a follow-up of The Handmaid's Tale. It's written slightly differently. Handmaid's Tale is written as a collection of tapes. I don't know if you know anything about A Handmaid's Tale, but the story is basically from the perspective of a handmaid, and she escapes the regime, Gilead, which is the new religious regime in what we call America. She escapes this regime and records her entire story on like a tape recorder and leaves all of that in a closet to be found by historians like into the future, right? And what is very fascinating about Margaret Atwood's kind of writing or story is that everything that she has written about in Handmaid's Tale has actually happened to real people. It has happened to real women. I mean, there's a lot to be said about like the justification of that, because Margaret Atwood has also placed, white women at the forefront of like taking down this regime, or like, the awfulness that is happening to women, when in reality most of the things that she's also writing about has actually not happened to white women like at all. They've happened to brown and indigenous and black women throughout history by the hands of white women. So it's like there's lots of conversation to be had around like why has she written this tale with like female suffering at the forefront when none of the female suffering has actually historically happened to any of the people that she's written like this book about. Like, yeah, there's also a lot to be said in the opposite direction. She's warning about like oligarchy, she's warning about dictatorship, she's warning about like religious interference in state. The Testament is the follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale, and it's written, one perspective is in diary form. Actually, no. All of them is in diary form or interview form, as in like the regime has fallen and now they're recounting how they might have contributed to help destroy that regime. And I found this really fascinating. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and then I started reading it and I actually couldn't really stop reading it. She's a really good writer. Like, she definitely knows how to craft a story. She knows how to craft characters that you both like and dislike at the same time. She's really good at writing quite complicated female characters, and like all the main characters of her books are women. I mean, this is what is basically currently happening in the US. Like, we're in the beginning stages of dictatorship and regime, which is so fucking scary. And not just in the US, in the UK as well. I mean, puberty blockers were just outlawed in the UK, which is insane. You see this in so many of these. You see this in so many of these regimes, where it's like they take out a lot of the minority groups first, such as trans people, such as queer people, such as women, or certain ethnic minorities, and it's just scary. And I've given it yippee status. We're in yippee territory. Next one is Weird Fucks by Lynn Tillman. This is it's very short. It's like an essay collection-ish. It's called Weird Fucks because she talks about her weird fucks that she had when she was younger, with lots of different kinds of people, lots of different kinds of men that she hurt, men that she got hurt by. I'm placing Weird Fucks in I'm finding it tier, simply because for a book called Weird Fucks, you're not really fucking weirdly. If you're gonna write about weird fucks, like, give me something weird. Give me a weird thing. This is not very, you're talking about like you're a young girl and you're being exploited, and that's weird. I don't feel like that's weird. Like, yes, we're talking a lot about like the intricacies of like consent, and like, is it you being exploited as an 18-year-old girl, having sex with 35-year-old men, 40-year-old men, if you want to be desired by them or you want to sleep with them? It wasn't weird enough for me. I'm gonna be honest. It wasn't weird enough. Now we get to all the books that I read at the library, or loaned at the library, or read in ebook format. Well, first of all, I read Twilight like 3 times this year because I'm working on like a project situation. I love Twilight. It goes into the yippee category immediately. Hello, my earrings are literally Twilight, the book. So yeah, love Twilight. I read Homebody, also in yippee category. I cried. It's a comic book or graphic novel about like being non-binary and like finding a home in your own body again, and coming back from feeling so distant from yourself as a person when you start transitioning and when other people start accepting you and like choosing your own name and like that kind of stuff. It was really like tender. So yeah, yippee. Different for Boys is also kind of a graphic novel. It has pictures in it, and it's written in a very particular way of like, it has redacted like blacked out sentences within the book, within the dialogue and within whatever. So it's like the person who's telling the story is also kind of censoring himself as he's telling the story, which I found really interesting. There'll be like entire sentences that are completely blacked out, and you as the reader go, what did you say? Like, what happened? Or certain words and sentences that are blacked out and censored. So it's like even the boy telling the story is like not comfortable with the truth, and it's essentially about this gay relationship between two best friends, how no one wants to admit that they're gay. And it's like the acts that they might be doing with each other aren't gay because they might be thinking about women while doing it. And Different for Boys goes in I'm Finding It, simply because it didn't leave that much of an impression on me. Oh my god. I don't even really want to fucking talk about this book. I read Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And, how hard can I throw this shoe? This is not just a shoe. This is truly like a stomper. This has a metal boot. You know what I mean? Like this shoe is heavy. This shoe is a brick, actually. I'm throwing a brick. I'm throwing a brick at George W. Bush. I fucking hate this book. I fucking hate this book. What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Yes, I did finish it, and it was relentless. What the fuck was that? I'm sorry if I have to hear this girl talk one more time about how she, refuses to wear these silky, beautiful dresses and just puts on like leather trousers instead, or how she's like such a fantastic hunter, but then we just like never really see her hunt like at all, or how like, oh my god, I'm just like, I'm gonna go insane. And there wasn't, like, people read this book because it's like romantasy, right? Like it's romance and fantasy and like smutty and controversial. And I'm like, there is no smut in this. It's Fade to Black. What was the point? I'm so angry. Don't make me talk about this book. I hate this book. And then also, Sarah J. Maas is a fucking Zionist, okay? So she's useless in all senses of the word. Let's move on because I'm getting angry. I need a moment. The next book is Death of a Bookseller. I love this book. I really didn't think I would. It looks really silly, like a cozy mystery. Girl, this book scared me. Like it is a psychological thriller, and it looks like so harmless in a way, with like the neon green cover, very like Brat of it. With like I don't know, like bright pink blood drips. Like it's just really silly. It's essentially about this little bookshop in Walthamstow, which is not very far from where I live. So it was very, close to home, East London vibes. And about the two of the people who work there, one called Roach and one called, what's her name? It'll come to me. Roach has worked there forever and is obsessed with true crime. But she's like so into true crime in a way that's like not good. You know what I mean? And she'll constantly, inside of her own head, in her like inner monologue, she'll talk about all of these like other normies, like very like incel vibe, honestly. There starts a new bookseller at this shop, and she's everything that Roach is not, right? Like she's beautiful, she is like so put together, she's so glamorous, she's so like worldly. She wears berets, she has coordinated outfits. And then Roach finds out that, what's her name? What is her name? Death of a Bookseller. Let's just Google. Laura. Laura writes poetry, and she specifically writes poetry about the victims of serial killers from their perspective. So like nothing to do with the actual killer, and all to do with like the women that were killed. And it's because Laura has a very particular connection to like crime. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because you have to go read this book. It's so good. But because of this, Roach like believes that they have some kind of like connection. It was meant to be that they were going to meet. And Laura detests Roach. Fucking hates her because she also detests true crime and everything that it stands for. And this like, it was so intense. It was like beautifully executed. I felt so tense the entire time reading it. I was like, oh my god, something bad is gonna happen. Oh my god, something bad. Oh my god, something's about to happen. Oh my god. And you don't know who's gonna enact violence upon who. Like you don't know if Laura's the one who's gonna Roach or if it's the opposite way around. Like, oh my god, it's so good. There were so many times where I went, oh my god, this is like the epitome of like being a girl, because you're like so full of rage all the time, and you're so full of like you're nasty. Like that shit is nasty to do to another person, and yet you're like justified in it. You know what I mean? It's like Laura is justified in her hatred for Roach because of how Roach is behaving and also everything that Roach stands for. But then Roach is also kind of justified in her opinion of Laura and the things that she does to Laura. And then you're just going, you're both insane. But in ways that I can understand, where I'm like, I'm also these people. I'm also Laura. I'm also Roach. I can also be insane. Death of a Bookseller is me in my luteal phase. I have given it yippee status, okay? It was so good. Like, I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified. Could not put it down. So yeah, go read that book. And then we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. When I say, I have never quicker taken a shoe off my foot and hurled it onto the stage, onto the podium, towards the president's face. This was insane. In the exact opposite way that Death of a Bookseller was insane. I was reading it and I was going, what the fuck are we doing as a people, as a society, and I had to Google several times, was this originally a fanfiction? And it was not. This just came to be inside of Ali Hazelwood's brain. And it was perhaps not something that was to be shared with me, okay? And I'm also saying, if you're gonna write something that's like Omegaverse-esque or adjacent to the Omegaverse, at least do something with it. At least be outrageous in one type of way. Like I'm begging you to take a risk. I'm begging you to create characters that don't want me to stab my own eyes out. I'm begging you. I'm begging you to make me care about your characters. Isn't that so controversial to say? Please, I'm on my hands and knees. Make me care about what the fuck you're writing, because I don't care. I'm moving on. And the last book is Icebreaker, kind of in the same vein as Bride, to be completely honest. I thought I was gonna put this in I'm Finding It, and then the further away from finishing that book, I'm just gonna have to throw my shoe. This shoe is probably more likely like a flip-flop, and it's a hesitant throw, but it's a throw nonetheless. Okay, it has to be said, it has to be thrown. I don't need to be hearing about how small and petite you are with such a huge ass versus your male love interest who's so huge and broad-shouldered and muscular, but also such a golden retriever. I truly do not need to be hearing about that every other fucking sentence. I don't need to be reminded about how small and petite you are. So skinny. Should we call Bella Hadid? You know what I mean? Get Bella Hadid on the phone. It was enough. And also, these people are humping like bunnies. Like bunnies. I was going, people surely are not having this much sex. People will not be getting anything done. What are you talking about? These straight people are insane. And I'm also just this is a kind of a reverse harem situation, but you're only having sex with one person. So again, I'm you're not even outrageous enough for me to be okay, what's going on? I don't care about the conflict. Who the fuck is Aaron? It made me tired. It really, really did make me tired. And then also, I'm sorry, if you're having sex, you're having sex in the back of a car when all of your friends are there and a taxi driver, and none of them know that you're having sex in the back of the car. That's assault. That's assault. For everyone present in that situation, none of these people have consented to you humping and dumping back there. You know what I mean? That's actually an insane thing to do. That made me go, but you can't publish this and then just not fucking talk about it. The people, the girlies on fucking Book Talk, they're oh my god, it's so hot. Girl, that will be it for me. I think overall it's been a really good reading year for me, just because I've actually, most of the books that I read were in I'm a Star or up, Yippee or televangelism. So it's actually been, I found some really good gems, and I'm really excited for what the next year is bringing. And, I'm being mindful about the kind of content that I'm consuming, and I'm definitely leaning more towards a written literary point rather than just consuming content online, because sometimes, I need to stop my brain from rotting rather than encouraging it, And thank you so much for, oh my God, if you've sat through this entire thing, thank you so much for tuning in, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I will see you later. Bye.